Hello. The last time we did one of these shows was in September. We did a little run. We did a show in London. And, God, so much has been going on since then, hasn't it? I mean, not least, we've got Harriet now. We had her then. We'd had her then, but she'd only just begun, so she was very new.
We've corrupted her now. Yeah. She is a foul mouth. You thought she was lovely. Woof! Behind the scenes.
But I know her a lot better now. For example, I know that sometimes she is not who she seems. And I want to tell you this story because we haven't put it on the pod because we wanted to save it for a live show. So a few weeks ago, we went to Glasgow and we were doing a lunch. We were doing a lunch for some journalists up there. And Ruth wasn't with us because she was already in Ireland, Scotland. Yeah. And we all go to Starbucks. It's me, Laura, and Harriet, and we order our coffees. They take our names. We go and get our coffees. And someone goes, Jane, flat white or something. Is it a flat white?
Single shot oat latte.
Of course. And Harriet picks it up, and I'm like, that's not yours, it's Jane's. And she says to me, I am Jane. And I'm like, what do you mean you're Jane? Anyway, then she explained to me why she does this, which I think she should share with you.
Am I the only person that does this? Don't all you do it as well? Beth and Ruth think this is very weird, but I think it's very normal because once I've actually had to oppress them with my order, which is the single shot oat latte, that is enough to remember without they have to remember my name as Harriet. It can take half an hour to do the ordering. So I just put Jane, but it does sometimes mean that they're shouting, Jane, Jane, and I'm thinking, I wonder if my single shot oat latte is gone.
So when they were telling me this, I was like, wait a minute, Harry, you're an ex-cabinet minister that's a baroness that lives in a really posh part of London, and you think that there's more Janes there than Harriets?
Anyway, it's given me a lot of joy because now, when I go to Starbucks, I order a coffee in the name of Jane, take a selfie and send it to Harriet. So I quite enjoy doing that. Yeah.
But it's not all about us tonight. We have asked you in advance, and there, I think, are opportunities as well to hand in cards now for questions that we're going to do in the second half of the show. And I think I'd like a drum roll here. Can you all start patting your knees, please? Yep. Yeah.
Oh!
You're going to get a prize if yours is red out. You're going to get a sexy, if I can do this.
Very sexy.
Electoral Dysfunction tote bag. And because Sky are doing rather well at the moment, they're even going to put in a mini bag of Haribo for you.
Yeah.
So make them good questions. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
What's not to like? And everyone's been talking, haven't they, about this massive event tonight in Chelsea this week, actually, not just tonight, because ours is a more bijou event than the other massive event in Chelsea. And what I want to know is, anyone rolled out of the Pimstown Chelsea Flower Show here? Anyone? Woo. Yay!
Yeah.
How many Pims in are you? Quite a few? You're okay? Don't throw yourself over.
Is that...
You what? Lovely, of course.
Is that a member of the royal family up there?
Harriet thinks the royal family went to the wrong gig. And they should be here. I was like, I said that might actually, if Kate Middleton turned up, it would help with ticket sales, I'm sure. I'm sure. And anyway, tonight, Armando Iannucci is our guest. And it was 20 years ago this week that the first ever episode of The Thick of It was broadcast. So I think, should we just give him a round of applause? And basically what I'm envisaging with this sort of interview with him is that I sit back and then these two talk to him about the thick of it and political satire, and they try and work out who was who in the new Labour government, and also just sort of share stories about if it's really like that, because journalistically sometimes it feels like it is, and that's where we should start. Should we start? Should we crack on? Because 20 years ago it was in the thick of it, and a year ago I was also in the thick of it. Do you remember this? Are you looking forward to the election? Can you win it? Can you win it?
I have to say, Beth, I feel so sorry for your kids if that's your usual sort of timbre of voice. Can you tidy your room? Can you tidy it? Can you tidy it? Can you load the dishwasher? Can you load it?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Also, just like politicians, I'll get you later. Just like politicians, they completely ignore me as well. So if Angelo's out here, he can attest to that. But yeah, that was my fishwife moment. Everyone thinks that's really...
Can I just butt in there?
Oh, yeah.
I think fishwife is probably a banned expression now as being in breach of the rules of the Institute of Political Correctness. But anyway, leaving that on one side, we've been told now that we're not going to speak about fish for 12 years.
12.
So,
you've had the WhatsApp from number 10.
Exactly.
Don't mention fish.
You're so on message, Harriet. You're so on message.
Yeah. But that was the moment. Where it really was the thick of it, because that was Downing Street the day they called the election. And if any of you came to the live show we did in London last year with Michael Gove, yeah, he was
fascinating.
He was fascinating. I think the audience in the end really quite enjoyed his conversation. He talked about how at Downing Street, how Rishi Sunak had told them there was going to be an election. They got locked in. And then he came out, got drenched in the rain, went back in, triumph. And then Michael Gove et al. All kind of filed out. So that was me shouting at the cabinet, can you win it? Which, given the situation in the polls, was probably the worst question ever. I really should have thought of something better than that, shouldn't I?
And wasn't that Michael Gove saying, who dares win? This is to Rishi Sunak. Who dares wins, you dare, you'll win.
Which I have to say, I think Michael is naughty, because Michael is one of these people that absolutely understands political history and is a real geek about it. And he will have known that the whole Who Dares Wins chat was Portillo's chat right before he got sprung for running and got absolutely the keister kicked out of him and just died horribly and stopped being a politician thereafter. So I think he was probably being a little bit naughty, was Michael. Bit naughty, yeah.
Naughty. But you know, that was a year ago, and since our election, I have to say, and this is suboptimal if you're a UK political journalist, that the action hasn't really been following our election, has it? It's been about the election of Trump in the White House, and actually what's kind of been a bit weird is, or unusual for me at least, is the way in which what's happening in the White House and with Trump is driving our politics. I mean, Ruth, for you, what would be your 3 big takeaways from Trump?
So the big thing is he has even less guardrails than he had last time, and he will just say stuff. And I think that we'd also forgotten the pace of it. You know, that 4-year gap that we had, we sort of forgot that there's a new mad shit that happens like every second day, and then like you're only just digesting it and then another one happens. And that everybody, like it's his world and everybody else is just reacting to it. So the big ones for me are, I mean, the thing that I'll take away from the last year is that horrendous ambush of Zelensky in the White House. Like that horrific, like I was watching it on telly with just like the pit of my stomach. It was horrific to watch. And yet the day before he'd been so good, if you like, and polite to Starmer, and then, you know, and then sort of 3-4 weeks later, when he was in the Vatican with Zelensky, he was fine again. It's just like you cannot keep up, and it's kind of like the whim of a tyrant, but he's elected. It's the oddest thing. He's almost like one of these kind of Gaddafi-esque Middle East strongmen that just say, I want 64 wives and a camel right now. Like, he just clicks his fingers and stuff happens. But he's also like, we're not used to that in an American president. And we're also not used to people not being polite. Like, that was horrific. It was so rude and so aggressive. And I was so proud of Starmer and King Charles for the very next day putting Zelensky on a plane and showering him with love. And I was really proud of the UK for showing the rest of the world that actually there is a way that you speak to wartime leaders that are heroes in my eyes. And we did it right, and we slightly showed Trump up for the small man that he is.
But I think it's really shown up a problem with the way that American politics works, because although, by all accounts, Trump is going down in the polls and is likely to get a thumping in the midterms, there's a kind of real lack of accountability, because here you've got a new prime minister and you've got a new leader of the opposition, and you've got Nigel Farage as well. So as soon as Keir Starmer does something, it's immediately, what does Kemi Badenoch think? How does she challenge it? What does Nigel Farage think? What does Ed Davey think? You've got leaders of political parties who are part of the political system that will hold the Prime Minister to account. The Democrats don't have anybody. There isn't a go-to person who can bring together and hold to account and shine a light on what he's doing. And the Democrats won't have a new presidential candidate for some years. So we've got a sort of rather unaccountable system there. You know, we've discovered recently that there are many ways to get rid of a prime minister who becomes unpopular. In fact, the Tories specialised in it. You know, there was letters into the chair of the 1922 committee. There was ministerial resignations that could do it. In the Labour Party, it'd be like a vote of no confidence in the Parliamentary Labour Party. We've got loads of party mechanisms that really do operate to get rid of a leader if their own party thinks they're going wrong. But in America, there's nothing except that big hand on that man pen that is signing all those documents. It's a problem.
Do you think they're running, I shouldn't say, you'll be cross with me if I'm going to ask anyway. Do you think they're like running through the options for Keir Starmer yet? Ways to oust a Labour leader? I'm going to get really done in the throat for that. She's like, that wasn't in the script.
Bless you for thinking
Definitely not. Definitely.
No, definitely not. No, that was naughty of me. Definitely not. No, really not. But look, I mean, coming back to Starmer, though, you've both actually, across your yawning political divide, you've been quite impressed with how he's handled Trump, haven't you? Both of you have.
Yeah, so I think where I think he's done well is that actually his natural sensibilities of being quite considered helps, because he doesn't let some of the wilder stuff that Trump says that's quite insulting about him or other ministers within his cabinet or the United Kingdom. He doesn't rise to the bait, and he was, you know, always better to be lucky than good. He was lucky that he was already elected in a way that somebody like a Mark Carney in Canada wasn't, where there were lots of people that had to say incendiary things back because they were in the middle of an election campaign. You know, he's got 5 years, he's got a massive majority. He can allow stuff to roll off him, and it sort of suits him to do that. I think Keir Starmer has lots of weaknesses, and we've discussed them on the pod. But actually, in terms of his natural way of just dealing with rude people, I think kind of suits the moment a little bit.
I think it is very, I completely agree with what you said, Ruth, but I think that there is a difficulty if the Prime Minister, for reasons that people completely understand, is not able to say what he actually thinks. And so when Trump introduced his tariffs, all the cabinet ministers were asked, do you agree with these tariffs? And obviously they were like, we're not to say we don't agree with the tariffs, because obviously the government strategy was to negotiate to get a better deal, to mitigate the impact of the tariffs. So you'd have cabinet ministers with a whole range of phrases like, we believe in free trade, but are you against the tariffs? Well, we believe in open markets, but are you against the tariffs? Well, this is not the position we'd like to be in. And there was like 100 answers which were not able to answer the question. And although we understand that and agree that it would not be worth annoying Donald Trump if it would cost thousands of jobs at Jaguar Land Rover, it is a bit difficult if the Prime Minister doesn't tell the national story, even for very good reasons. And sometimes I've felt in the House of Commons, it's been a bit like ventriloquy, because Ed Davey's been saying it, but Keir Starmer is thinking it. I'm thinking, if I want to know what Keir Starmer is thinking about Donald Trump, just listen in to what Ed Davey's saying. It's very odd.
Can I just say, though, I think there's a bigger problem, actually, than that, Harriet, which is not that Keir Starmer doesn't get to say what he thinks. I think the problem that's developing is people don't think Keir Starmer knows what he thinks, or that he doesn't have a strong belief system. And I think that because he hasn't really laid out what Starmerism is or what his driving, force in politics is, apart from helping working people. I'm just talking about working people all the time. I don't get what his touchstones are. I don't get what moves him. I don't get why he's in it. I don't get why he left being DPP rather than he thought he'd be quite good at being an MP and Corbyn was a shit show, so I might as well try to be Prime Minister. I don't get the kind of ballast there that you had from a Gordon Brown, or even the kind of ambition for the country that you got from a Tony Blair. I don't believe in Keir Starmer.
I mean, I've been thinking about this because the more I sort of follow him around, not obsessively.
Quite obsessively.
Don't have a choice. A little bit obsessively. But the more I follow him around and the more I look at what he's doing, he really is a doer.
Yeah.
He just gets on with doing it. So, say the Jaguar Land Rover. So Trump, they have a call on Wednesday night. He's in the middle of the Arsenal game. Not Donald Trump's not playing in the Arsenal team. Starmer's watching it. Then Trump decides overnight that he's going to put a tweet out saying he's going to announce something with a very big country.
Big and respected country.
Isn't it the 80th anniversary that day of the...
VDD is a whole different thing. Whole different thing.
Yeah, right, so Starmer's...
We're back at Stormy Daniels and we don't want to go there.
But Starmer's got quite a lot on. There's quite a lot on. And suddenly we're getting hoofed up.
He's at a fucking Arsenal game. How much has he got on?
That's the night before. And actually that game ended in sadness, but that's a different pod.
Oh, you didn't have a remontada.
And then we all end up at the Jaguar Land Rover factory where he sort of announces this trade deal, which I have some... When Kemi Badenoch calls it a tiny tariff deal, politically that is to attack him, but she does have a point in that it is very narrow and it really is only partially reversing some of the things that Trump has announced. And when we then all called him out and said, this is worse than what things were before Trump got into the White House, and sort of asked him quite tough questions at that factory, they were the correct questions. I mean, it is the truth that we are in a worse position. But I think for him, there was probably a bit of frustration in that he knows that it's not as good a deal, but it was really important to him to try and get those jobs saved. So in his mind, he might not be developing a narrative or telling a story or showing a vision, but he's just kind of workmanlike, kind of getting on with the job. And I think we saw that with India deal, we saw that with the EU, we'll come on to that. Do you sort of see that, Harriet, that he's kind of getting on with the job and maybe it will come good in 3 years? Will the public... I mean, he's got the worst... His poll ratings are now, at a record low. They dropped to a record low last week after his immigration announcement.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. He is getting on with the job. And my goodness, how much has come flung at him since he got elected. And, he has done well with the US deal, with the India deal and the EU deal. But I think that when he says to people, things will get better, give us a bit of time, give us the benefit of the doubt. In fact, there was where Streeting was doing an interview, he was saying, give us time and give us the benefit of the doubt. I think that people need to be told what it is they're waiting for and what it is they need to be a bit patient to wait for. So I think that without being risky and making promises that he can't keep, because he's really averse to the idea of promising things and then not delivering them, he's got to, I think, encourage people to put up with the difficulties in the here and now by explaining more about where we're going to get to and what it will be look like and what they're actually waiting for.
But that's kind of politics 101, and you can see it, and you're a really good political communicator and can talk about it. And Wes Streeting can see it, and he's a really good political communicator and can talk about it. And you've got people like Yvette Cooper and Angela Rayner and, Jess, and there's some really, really good political communicators around Keir Starmer, and presumably some of his advisors have, spent some time in politics as well. The idea that you tell people what you're doing at the time at which you're doing it to show that you're doing it and that there's a purpose to doing it, it's really, really basic. And and it's admirable that he wants to get on with the job. But, there's a big chunk of Theresa May about that. Like, I'm just going to get on with the job and I'm not going to shout about it. Well, you run out of political capital really quickly if you can't tell, one, your own story, and two, the country's story, and give people a sense of purpose, forward momentum, where the country's going. So, like, great that he's doing stuff. Hooray, A star. I mean, some prime ministers of late haven't. So, doing well. But you do have to have that.
The more you watch him, do you think he is more in the vein of Theresa May? If you think of sort of modern day prime ministers, is that who you think in style he most reflects?
Yeah, so I think he's far more a May Brown than he is like a Blair Cameron. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because he's, I think, probably a fundamentally decent man that works hard and takes the job seriously.
Yeah.
And I think the public have a certain sympathy for that, but I think it's not enough ever. And I think that's why these tend to be quite short premierships.
Well, look, before we get on to... I'm going to just... Yeah, go on.
Can I just add one thing?
Harriet,
one thing that I think he's really got to put the message out really, really strongly on, because for decades we didn't, and then we paid the price with Brexit, is we never made the case for the EU strongly enough from our political leadership. It was always about how we were going to stop it being bad on this or stop it being bad on that, and never saying, but actually here are the massive benefits of being in Europe. And I think as he deals with some of the worst aspects of the appalling Brexit deal that was, done by the previous Conservative government, I think he's got to make the argument it's not good enough just to actually do deals which do improve things. He's got to make sure that everybody in the Labour Party is making the argument all around the country that we need a closer relationship with Europe, and it will benefit us to have that closer relationship, even more so with what's going on with America. But it's not going to be self-evident to people. It just needs to be explained over and over again that that's why he's doing it.
Well, it's almost like you're a pro, Harriet, because that neatly brings us on to what you've been up to this week, which was being behind the scenes at the EU-UK summit.
Yeah, I go to these summits so you lot don't have to. So you lot don't have to. You're welcome. That is my public service there. Yeah, honestly, I had Brexit PTSD this weekend. It was truly awful. So like, Beth, can you just do, can you just do a curtain raiser for Monday morning, 7 a.m, curtain raiser. Just, give some analysis about Lancaster House and the day. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So I do loads of calls in the week up to it. I know about fishing. I know about the energy emissions trading scheme. I'm not going to explain it to you. Put it in my copy. No, I should have done, but it was so boring. No, I didn't. So we had, what else did I do? I did SPS. That was my degree. So every time I say on television, I'm like, social political science. No, I mean, it's, I just don't know what it is. It's sanitary, photosanitary. Yeah.
Food standards.
Basically food standards.
And the youth experience programme.
The youth experience. I was across this, people. I knew everything that was new. And then it got to sort of Sunday, and I watched the Arsenal game. That was good. And then I was like, I really need to write this piece. So I phoned all the people that I'd been phoning all week, and everyone went, nothing's agreed until everything's agreed. And I'm like, no. And then it was like, it's going down to the wire. And I'm like, please, no, it can't go down to the wire. And then basically I sort of sat there and I wrote up everything I already knew about, the fishing deal, and the French want the fish and we don't want to give them the fishing waters. And I wrote down, and they want the Germans want a youth mobility scheme, but Starmer doesn't want to do it because he's worried about Brexit backsliding and Nigel Farage. I did it all, I wrote it all. And everyone's like, just phone back in a few hours. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm nearly 50 years old. I'm not doing it. I've done so many Brexit all-nighters. So anyway, I know it's going on too long. So basically, I sort of I phoned everyone else and filed some copy at 10:30, which was a seriously holding piece, and then sort of slept for a few hours and woke up at 6 a.m, my phone's ringing. It's like, we had a breakthrough! And then everyone's going nuts. And of course, at 2 o'clock in the morning, they all sign off this deal. And it reminded me I was taken back to sometime in 2018, 17, don't know when, Theresa May at the Commission. I had to go back through my photos of sort of where did I sleep. And it was basically Theresa May had gone, this was why it was Brexit PTSD, because we'd gone to a summit, one of the many Brexit summits in Brussels. Laura Kuenssberg had done we call it a pool clip. So a broadcaster does an interview with a politician, everyone uses it. Laura did the one on the way in. Of course, she did the one on the way in, right? The way in. And I was charged with doing the one on the way out. Okay? And it gets to about 10 o'clock and they're having their dinner. They're having their Brexity dinner. Actually, this song was actually about my let's just not go there. And Theresa May's in the room. And James Slack at the time was her press secretary. And I'm like, are they coming out? Because I really want to go to bed. And they're like, no, nothing's agreed until everything's agreed. And I basically ended up sleeping on the floor of the Commission. And Laura was messaging me going, Beth, when they come out, can you ask them about when... And I was just like, stop it, go and have a glass of wine, get into bed. And I went to sleep on the floor of the summit. We did that bloody clip at 5:30 in the morning. So I decided that I actually have lost I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
Yeah.
Where was I?
Where was... So tell me about your father, because this is therapy.
I've totally lost my
Was it a happy childhood?
I really was it a happy very cathartic for me.
So all I want to know is... So at these European summits, there's always like the picture.
Oh, yeah,
taken,
sorry, yeah.
Which is like 27 people, which is 25 charcoal or navy suits with ties.
Yeah.
And then Ursula von der Leyen and the token woman PM, whoever country it happens to have them at that time, wearing a pastel.
Yeah.
One shoved down the front so it doesn't look like we're shoving all the women up the back, and the other one shoved right at the back.
Yeah.
But how many actual people are at these things?
Oh, God, it's an operation. So,
so does each of the 27, do they all like have their own entourage?
So basically, you have the principals on the stage, which was the council president, the commission president, the prime minister. And then in the front row, you've got the EU negotiating team. So you had Callas, who's the chief diplomat. You had Sefcovic, took me ages to be able to pronounce that, so proud. He's like the chief negotiator, sort of, he does all the technical stuff. And then you had Rachel Reeves was there because it's all about the economy. But
the people that go with them, civil service.
I'm really going on tonight, aren't I? I'm like you tonight. Ruth talks a lot, but I'm going for it. And then they have their entourages, and then there's a room full of about 100, 150 people. So you've got all of the Sherpas, who are all the people that do the negotiations, there's dozens of officials, and then you have all of the UK press pack and all of the European press pack, so it's absolutely packed. And then I really wanted to go first on the questions this time, because I only really had one question, and I really didn't... Normally I have variations, so I messaged the PM's team, and I said, can I go first? Because they always do the BBC. If you notice, they say BBC, ITV, Sky News. And sometimes if I'm really lucky and I'm, that they'll let me go first. And they said, no, you can't go first because they've already done the order. So they all have a piece of paper. They've all know who's coming, who's asking the questions, where they're from. So it's a very structured event, really.
Harriet, you've done a few of these, haven't you, in your time?
Well, not the Brexit summits, I'm glad to say, but certainly I was around in government during the global financial crisis, where there was an emergency summit of the G20, which Gordon Brown called when he was the Prime Minister, called it in number 10. And it was literally, everybody was there. China was there, Medvedev was there, Barroso from the EU, Obama was there. I mean, literally everybody was gathered. But because it was more of an emergency summit and an incredibly fast-moving situation, although obviously all the officials had been working away in preparation, there was still a sense at the night before the work of the summit of what on earth is going to happen to the global economy. And it was quite fascinating seeing Gordon Brown in that room with people going, what's going to happen to the economy now and all. And he had a kind of idea of what could be done about it and how the whole global economy could be protected from market collapse. So it was extraordinary to see that dynamic of the world's leaders realising there was a real catastrophe upon them and coming together to work out what to do about it. But there was a bigger issue, which was to do with myself, which was previously, just in the run-up to the summit, I went into my office, and was saying, what's going on? And they said, they looked a bit down and a bit ashen-faced. And they said, you've been invited to the summit dinner. So I said, oh, well, that's great, put it in the diary. And they were like, it's not great. So I said, well, what's the problem? Just put it in the diary. And they said, no, it's the wives' dinner. And it was like...
Were you not the deputy leader or something?
Yeah, indeed I was, and in the cabinet. But I was allocated to... And I was like, whose wife am I in this actual scenario? But the other thing is that even though the global economy was going into a meltdown, we had to sit down in my office and have a big ideological forum about what was the correct feminist thing to do. Because should I be showing sisterhood to these women whose the only thing they had in common, aside from being women, was being married to global leaders? But did I want to be rejecting them and saying, I am not, your sister, I am above you, so I'm not going to come to your dinner. I want to be going to the real dinner. Or should I show sisterly solidarity to them? Or should I kick up a fuss and say, I'm nobody's wife, I'm coming to the real dinner? Anyway, so... in terms of, I'm just going to ask you all, what do you think I should have done? Do you think I should have kicked up a fuss and gone to the big dinner?
Yes. I think you should have told them to get stuffed.
Yeah. That's too bad. Oh dear. It's too bad. Because I actually thought I couldn't dump on the wives. I'll have to go to the wives' dinner. Anyway, so I went to the wives' dinner, which actually was catered by... Jamie Oliver, so the food was delicious. But I was like yumming away at the food. But I noticed there was a really lively conversation had started up amongst the wives. And it was that there was this new amazing weight loss regime that was being talked about, which was a slice of lemon in a boiling water. So that was my experience of summitry, I'm afraid. Not very good.
I wrote a book years ago about women that had broken the glass ceiling in different jobs. And I interviewed Christine Lagarde, who was the French finance minister and then went on to chair the IMF and is just the most amazing woman. She was also the first legal president of this global law firm. So she'd broken sort of the glass ceiling in politics and law and finance. And she was talking about that whole period and how she loved working with Alistair Darling, who was our Chancellor at the time, and how he was really solid and really good and all the rest of it. And but she talks about the absolute precipice that we were on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of I remember watching the TV news at the time and it was quite scary and all the rest of it. But it wasn't until I interviewed her, who was trying to hold the world economy together with her bare hands and some sticky tape, just how close to complete meltdown the entire world economy was and what that would have meant for all of us. And the idea that you had to sit there as the deputy leader of the Labour Party and a cabinet minister in your own right with a bunch of women who've got nothing in common, not even a common language, talking about slices of lemon and water.
Christine Lagarde, it reminds me about Ursula von der Leyen, because I don't know about you, but every time I see her, I always think, she's so articulate and so clear. When she was talking about these countries, the countries in Europe with the UK, we've got a common history and we're natural allies. I don't know whether you saw that clip of her on the TV. I thought she was so fluent. And I sit there looking at her and I think, you've had 7 children and you're still on your first husband. It's absolutely extraordinary.
There's nothing she can't do.
No, she's amazing.
How many husbands
else do you want her to be on?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, actually, I was going to bring Ursula von der Leyen up because going back to your thing about Starmer and why, because you guys all applauded when Harriet talked about Brexit and a better deal and being a bit braver about doing that, right?
Explaining the EU,
explaining it. And it was really interesting because at the press conference, there's Costa, who's the chair of the president of the council, von der Leyen, president of the commission. They're basically the big, EUs that run the EU. And then there's Starmer in the middle. And it really was Ursula von der Leyen who kind of managed to sort of sell it a bit,
she did.
Seemed to be able to sell it. And the thing that stuck in my mind was when she sort of said, we're old friends, but these are new beginnings. And she really did sort of frame it as a way of like turning the page and a new chapter. And I spoke to some government figures about this, and I was like, Starmer was a bit workmanlike. It was he wasn't too expansive about the reset in the sense of seeming really enthusiastic about it and positive about it. He was very much in the detail. When she said, and we've got fishing waters for 12 years like this, I looked at him, he looked like he was chewing a wasp.
I'll tell you why that
really
is, because
that.
He's just waved goodbye to the Scottish election next year in May.
Yeah.
Because he's already fucked oil and
that's
gas.
why I thought they might not do it.
He's already, Scottish pensioners are as unhappy as pensioners in every other part of the country, and now fishing. The poll lead that Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, had, compared to where they are now, both him individually and the party, is off a cliff, and it's only because of the decisions that Starmer's taken in government. The idea that the way it was framed was really badly. Sorry, I don't want to get excited about fish, but I am Scottish. I am of my nation. But it is that they have given access to UK waters, by which the Scottish Fishermen's Federation and the White Fish Fleet and all the rest of them here, other people can fish our fish for 12 years, and they are getting nothing back in return. There is nothing for selling fish abroad. There's nothing for the fleet, apart from the fact that the own government is going to give them, that they give in taxes to the government. So it's not like that particular cohort is getting anything back in the trade. The government has said, we will help you with British money and British taxpayers' money and all the rest of it, somewhere down the line maybe. But you thought you were getting away from this. We've done so much conservation work. Our waters are better stocked now than they have been for about 12 years. And now we're just saying to the entirety of the rest of Europe, come in. And I was a pro-Remainer. I was up on that stage fighting Boris. I still believe we need to have a better and closer relationship with the EU. But the absolute handling and framing of that, particularly to a Scottish audience, was woeful.
Yeah.
I've not been a supporter of him, if you've kept up, particularly.
There's not much love between you and him, is there?
Well,
No.
Unfortunately, we were told he was in the audience tonight, and there's several journalists from right-leaning papers that are in tonight, so I have to be very careful.
Okay, be careful. But we're going to have to move on. But on the Starmer thing, the point people were saying within government was because of his history as Mr. Second Referendum, as being very, very pro-European, it's almost like he's nervous about, or they're nervous about him seeming too enthusiastic. But actually, it might be that there's an argument about if you look at the polling and how the public are feeling about it, maybe he should just embrace it a bit more. But look, you're going to have to... apparently, I'm out of time. What a surprise. Before we go to an interval, we just want to quickly talk about something else that we got such a big reaction on the podcast about this. It's one of our sort of the big things that you've all messaged in and talked about with us. And it's about what you said, Harriet, about phones. Do you remember?
Yeah, this is about should smartphones, the smartphone function, be banned in schools? And by and large, I think, head teachers, they know how to run their schools and they don't want to be keeping on being told by government what they should be doing. However, I think in relation to smartphones, it's so important that they are backed up in most of their desires not to have smartphones in amongst the pupils at school, that I said that I thought I agreed. Actually, for once, I agreed with Kemi Badenoch and said I thought that they should be banned in schools. And I got loads of emails from people who agreed with that. And I actually heard this morning about the Finns. The Finnish have banned smartphones in schools. And I was just listening on the radio to it, and I was passing a whole group of girls at a bus stop on their way to school. And, you normally see girls all chatting away to each other. They were all standing there looking at their phones, and I thought that was really sad. But don't you love Finland? They really, it's dark a lot of the year, but actually they've got the best orchestras in the world. They've got, they've reduced alcoholism and obesity, and they've also banned smartphones, and all feel the better for it. So I thought we should.
They've got lovely fjords.
Yeah, they've got lovely fjords as well. Sorry, I'm digressing again. So I thought that we should do that. We got loads of emails agreeing with that. But I think it's partly the issue of what is going to be our attitude to these tech bros. How much are we going to control what we think about the use of technology and shape and frame it, or how much are we just going to be told we're selling this stuff and therefore you've all got to have it?
Yeah, I honestly don't think I would have been a politician if phones with cameras on them had been around when I was a teenager or a student. Genuinely, I don't, because I would like to say that I fully engaged with and enjoyed my time at university. As somebody who went at the age of 17 and stayed till the age of 21 and did all of the things that 17-year-olds to 21-year-olds do. And the idea that I could have possibly gone into politics if there had been photographic evidence is just beyond it. But I do, we've had a little bit of a chat about this. I do kind of worry as well, as a mum of a boy, and particularly with the prevalence or the ability to get hold of pornography and stuff like that online, and also the kind of Andrew Tate influencers and all the rest of it. And I think possibly being in a same-sex relationship, and while we always try to have good male role models about Finn, like he doesn't have a dad, he doesn't have a father figure in the house, and it's making sure that we're able to speak to him about stuff and that he doesn't go online to find it, because there's no filter online. And I also think about other kids when I was growing up that were getting bullied and stuff, where if it happened at school, it was terrible. But the idea that follows at home with you in your pocket, and it's like you've got no respite in the house and all the rest of it. Like I love my phone. I can barely be separated from it. I'm one of these people that it's the last thing I do before I go to bed at night. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. So I'm, unlike Ursula von der Leyen, I might be on my next spouse in any amount of time. But I do worry about kids. I really do.
It's so interesting you say this, because I think about this a lot as well, because I also believe that had phones existed when I was a teenager, I could have been in a lot of trouble, really, because you do stupid things. Well, I did. I mean, maybe you all didn't, but I did a lot of stupid things when I was a teenager. And you're exploring life, and I have noticed with some of my teenage kids, they're much more mindful about going out and drinking and staying out a bit too late, because maybe they've grown up in a world in which they're constantly being filmed or think they might be filmed, or everyone's got a phone out. And it does change, I'm sure it does change your behaviour, because you're aware that you could always be being recorded, do you think?
Yeah, I think you have less freedom. I think there's a tyranny of feeling as if a moment might be captured and used against you for the rest of your life, and always feeling that somebody might capture that moment. And I just didn't have that growing up, and there was a freedom there that I didn't even know I had.
I mean, just going back to what you were saying about Finland, Harriet, do you sort of see that this is an area where you think the government should be more robust in terms and more prescriptive about not just regulating tech, but also about whether kids should have phones? Do you think, would you like to see the government move on this? Because we know it's such a pressing issue for so many people.
It is. I think there's some things where you just want to leave the individual to make up their mind. There's some things where you just want to leave the school to make the choice. But there is some things that need the government to set the framework. And along a whole load of things on technology, you need government regulation. You can't leave it to individuals because there's so much peer pressure. You can't leave it to the market because they're just going to do whatever is, in their profitable interest. You've got to have regulation. But the problem is our regulatory body, which is, principally the House of Commons, is not fit for purpose for regulating tech. I mean, David Cameron announced in 2013 he was going to do the online harms bill. And, it was a priority of his, but it didn't get royal assent, that act, until 2023. It took 10 years. Meanwhile, the whole tech landscape had completely changed. So I think that as well as recognising what things unashamedly have to be done by the state for the protection of individuals, also we've got to change the way the House of Commons works so that we've got a pool of expertise, this is a very technical subject, and that we can do it at pace in real time and not always be left behind, which is, the proposal that we have a really powerful committee to whom Parliament delegates the powers to do primary legislation, to actually change the law in this committee, and that it's a standing committee that's got a really good pool of expertise, and it's got members who are on there for a whole Parliament who can build up expertise. Otherwise, our regulation just makes us look a laughing stock and rings a run round us by these tech bros.
And I think it's not just in the hardware either. I think there is a bigger subject matter there about how out-of-date legislation can become. Because I remember the really big fights about gambling reform that happened while you guys were in government, and whether there was going to be changes to whether there's going to be super casinos in Blackpool and all that sort of thing. It was in the Brown government. And they changed everything. And it was about limits on puggies or slot machines, limits on betting, all of that sort of thing. And then mobile phones came along and completely changed the game. And they're now having to go back and try to look at trying to restrict what you can do online or on your phone to what you can do in a betting shop, because they're wildly different. The law, it's because the law just didn't envisage that you would have a casino in your back pocket all of the time. And it's just, we're very methodical in our legislation. We make sure that when it comes in that it works. But by God, it takes a long time to get there.
That too is the technological override. That too ought to go to this committee.
Well, we've run over, and
by miles.
That's completely stuffed your chances of having a gin and tonic. So sorry, I'm joking. Can we just do a quick show? I'm just genuine. If you think that phones should be banned for under 16-year-olds, can you put your hands
school?
Up? In school.
Yeah, in school.
Wow.
Okay. We should take a photo of that and send it in Downing Street.
I've got a phone. I'm over 16.
What? Oh, the irony. Right, the irony.
Put your hands up if you think.
Put your hands up again if you think.
I'm going to send that in.
Here we go. And if you think the opposite, actually, because that's not every hand.
Yeah.
Let's for balance.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Here we go. I'll zoom in because there's not as many of you. There we go.
Well, look, we're going to have to go for a break. You're going to have some English sparkling wine up there. You might go for some Pimm's or a G&T. So we'll be back in, they're still saying 20 minutes, and we're going to have Armando with us. So enjoy the break, and we'll see you with the big guns in 20 minutes. Right, we're back. I hope you all had a nice break. And thank you for your fab questions. We're going to answer some of those in a moment. If we call your question, give us a big wave, and then Alice is going to be in the foyer, I promise she will be, with a tote bag. So you need to go and find her in the foyer afterwards. She'll be literally dressed in them. We're just going to put them all over her, and you take them off her, you just unpin them. And then you take your tote bag home. It's nice. I'm going to try and get one. So if one of you doesn't want to claim it, that's fine. I'll have it. I'll take it home with me. So that's all right.
I'm quite excited for this half, and not just because we asked them to put a double gin in your gin and tonic, Beth. And I'm not telling any tales out of school here, but she's a one Shandy Mandy, so pretty much anything could happen. But I'm also delighted for this half because, one, there's not enough Scots in this pod, so it's great to have a Scottish guest. But two, just who it is, an absolute, I mean, you'll probably hate this, but a cultural icon, a national treasure. In the thick of it, Alan Partridge, in the Loop.
I know, stop it. Don't
Death of Stalin, David Copperfield.
Don't.
And also podcast sister / buddy. Yeah. Are they buddies if they're boys? I don't know. Anyway, because strong message here. Can we please give a strong hand clap here for Armando Iannucci?
Hello. I know you're quite far away from me. I sort of feel like I want to move
said, do you want
up.
a drink? I said, well, I don't know, lager. And said, yeah, it's quite far away from. I thought, kind of in the middle of...
I think you getting up and down to put your drink down and pick it up again could be quite fun.
Yeah.
So look...
this is my 12th.
It's very nice to have you here in this special week.
This special week?
This special week.
Every week is a special week.
But 20 years.
Oh, 20 years, of the thick of it, yes. Which I hadn't realised until I got an email from The Guardian saying, 5 years ago you did an interview for the 15th anniversary of the thick of it. And we didn't put it out. It's coming out tomorrow. I thought, words and language change so quick. Did I say anything 5 years ago that today would be considered like the most offensive word? But I think it was fine.
Did you not ask them if you could check it, given it was 5 years ago?
No, I thought, wouldn't it be quite funny, actually, if it came out? But they hadn't changed any of it, and it was talking about, the end of the first Trump administration, and I wonder what Rishi Sunak's going to do with the country, and all that sort of thing,
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask you was, why do you think the thick of it became such a sort of, as Ruth put it, cultural treasure? Did you, in your mind, when you created it, did you think, one day I'm going to be here 20 years on?
No.
And I'm going to be adored by people for giving them the thick of it?
No, I did it because I was angry. It was the invasion of Iraq. And I just wanted to know why something like that could happen. What is it about our constitution, or our unwritten constitution, that will allow a prime minister with a large majority to do something that everyone is telling him will be insane and will cause more harm than good and will take decades to resolve itself? And how can a dossier full of so-called evidence be acquired to justify it? But I thought, if I did something just about that, it would probably become a little bit too much. And it really meant what I wanted to do was something that showed you what goes on behind those closed doors. How are these decisions made? How do they arrive at these positions? And I just finished doing a documentary about Yes Minister, which is an amazing show and still stands up. But I noticed, the power dynamic there is the civil servant, the head of the civil servant, trying to stop the minister. And I thought that had changed, and it was really the minister trying to do something but being told by Number 10 and the Treasury and this group of people called the Enforcers, which is the Malcolm Tucker. They sound like the Dementors,
they are the Dementors.
Who kind of fan out across all the ministries, telling the minister what they can do, what they can say, what they can get away with, what they can't put through as a policy. So it was about that, and I did some research and spoke to people, and then I, suddenly found out, to my astonishment, that the country was being run by lots of 23 and 24-year-olds who are very excited to be in government, and but don't know how to buy a car or whatever. coming up with a health policy, and then, we've moved. We're now going to come up with a furlough scheme. Don't know what that is, but let's come up with one. You know, it's. I just thought, why don't we know this? So that was the idea. I didn't think it would be. It was done on a very tiny budget to start with. BBC 4, which had just started and had very little money, and I just thought, with that money, if we found a disused building somewhere and made it the offices, and we could and let them. I don't know. I didn't even think it would be. I didn't set out for it even to be that funny. I just thought it should feel real and authentic and have a funny storyline. But there's a great team of writers on it, and Jesse Armstrong, who is now behind Succession, and so on. So that was it. I think I knew it was going to be something when, in the opening scene, Malcolm Tucker comes in and he has to persuade the minister to resign. Not because he's done something wrong, but because all the press is saying he's hanged by a thread, and if that keeps happening, it damages the government. So even though he's done nothing wrong, he's got to go, and he's written his resignation letter. And there's a bit in the script where the minister says, "Why can't you fire Tom? He's at Transport." And Malcolm says, "Transport's important, it's buses." And the minister then, gets angry and goes, "I know what Transport is." And at that point, it just said in the script, I think, Malcolm Tucker looks at the minister. But Peter Capaldi just went, and his eyes suddenly turned into the eyes of death. And I was watching this live, and I turned to Adam Tandy, the producer, and I turned and went, "I think we've got a series." I didn't think it would, 20 years on, we'd still be talking about it, but I knew there was something there. Yeah.
It was interesting as well, because people often ask you, don't they, or have asked you, why don't you do it again? Why don't you do it around the pandemic? Do you do it around Trump? But actually, you said in an interview I read that you intentionally did it in a way that it wasn't around actual events.
No, it touched on things in ether, but it wasn't.
Keep it timeless, right? Which is smart.
Yes, and
also,
you
are quite smart.
Two things you couldn't do now, I suppose. One is, Malcolm wouldn't survive.
Malcolm would not
he'd
survive.
Be up for verbal abuse and bullying, right? And I'd love to see that meeting. So there's that.
Sorry, I just think the genius of it is almost like the genius of Frasier, when they took him out of Cheers and they gave him Niles, who was even more Frasier than Frasier.
Yeah.
The genius of Malcolm Tucker is Jamie, the other Scottish thug that destroys photocopiers with his spare hands and actually kicks people.
And he was. We always had Jamie down as the person who.
Were they always both Scottish?
They were both Scottish. It was unintentional. It's just. No, Malcolm wasn't Scottish in the script. It's just Peter Capaldi turned up, and I thought, there's Malcolm when he turned on me, actually, deliberately. I asked him to turn on me, and it was quite scary. No, Jamie's the one. It's almost like Malcolm is the acceptable face of government shouting, whereas Jamie is like the plutonium that you cannot take out of its casket. But the other thing is that I suppose it was done at a time when actually everyone was worried that they might have done something wrong and that people would find out. But now, that doesn't seem to concern people in politics. For me, it was when, in the debate over Brexit, it was post-Brexit, about the agreement, and it was under a Boris Johnson administration, so we can see where this is about to go. Somebody the minister got up and said, literally, we will be breaking international law, but only in a limited and specific way.
I remember it.
In the House of Commons.
Yeah,
and I thought, if I was stopped for speeding and I said, yes, I was speeding, but only in a very specific... I wasn't speeding at a lot of speeds. I was only speeding at 70 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour area. Once. And I won't do it, it doesn't wash. So that's when I thought something's gone seriously wrong. And so, the plot device of any episode of The Thick of It is, my God, this mustn't get out. But nobody cares anymore if it gets out or not.
Do you think you couldn't write it now then?
I think it would have to be a different thing.
Politics sort of imitates art,
Well, and also we now seem to have, with the exception of the United Kingdom, a habit of electing entertainers as our leaders. And we did. Again, Boris was elected because he's a sort of,
Yeah.
and Trump is it's the populism leans into entertainment. Trump is the leader of that in terms of all he's concerned about are ratings, figures, audiences, the best at this. Do you see how many people came out for my thing? You know, if I did this, it would be tremendous. It's all about the immediate attention. It's about attention. That's what it is. But a lot of politics now has now been set around attention. So if you were going to, so therefore they provide their own kind of commentary on themselves. Like they're sort of self-basting satirists, these politicians, in that they provide, they always say, I'm just being funny. If they get accused of saying something offensive, or I'm just being funny, can't you take a joke? Lighten up. And I suppose Farage is in that mold, that kind of entertainment. He's an amazingly, he comes on, he never uses notes. He will come on, if you asked him to come on right now and talk for 10 minutes on a subject, he would come on and talk about it, and you'd be thinking, that's quite impressive. Might not agree, but that's quite impressive. It's geared towards entertainment now. So what do we do? I don't know. I think it's interesting that the comedians who are anywhere near effective are the ones who kind of act like journalists, like Jon Stewart and John Oliver. They have like teams of researchers, and they sort of say, okay, this is the effect these people are trying to have on you, but what have they said, or what has happened as a result of what they've done, or is there an inconsistency between what they said today as opposed to last week and so on. So they're a bit more forensic. So it's more, I think it's more granular, and it's more, comedy or satire, or whatever you call it, needs to be a lot more honing in, pulling them apart in terms of their rhetoric and their methodology. If they're performers, okay, what are they doing about their performance that is luring you in? What are the little sleights of hand that they do?
One thing that you said at the beginning was about how you'd watched Yes Minister.
Yes.
And then you were like, well, it's not really the civil servants. They're not really pulling they're not really driving the machine anymore. And
yes, it's the advisors.
It's the advisors, it's the political operatives. And that was kind of very much in the era of New Labour.
Yes.
And so, because Harriet is here and you are here,
Oh my God, it's Harriet Harman.
It's Harriet Harman. Yeah. But, Harriet, to you, did you, back in 2005, 6, 7, could you see elements of Armando's comedy in real life? When you live in it, basically. I should just cut to the chase.
I mean, it was incredible because a buzz went round, because none of us had heard about it being made or anything like that. There didn't seem to be any advanced publicity or anything. Suddenly everybody was saying, you've got to watch it, you've got to watch it. It's absolutely incredible. And it was like you'd been in the room. It was like, how could he have been writing this? But I've got a question I want to ask you about Nicola Murray.
Yes.
And I'm asking for a friend because basically it's like she was so ineffective, but she was so hardworking and a nice person.
Yes.
But she was utterly destroyed by Number 10 and her ministerial colleagues putting the boot in. I just wondered if she was based on anybody.
Everyone in the thick of it is based either on a composite of different things we've heard in different people, or on a kind of guesstimate of what this person might be. So someone like Nicola, it's not so much, I just thought Rebecca is great. Rebecca Front,
she
who
was
played
completely brilliant.
reduced to a magnificent job as the minister. And Rebecca said a funny thing, which was like, Nicola Murray is the one thing that Malcolm really hates, which is a minister who has an opinion about what she wants to do. And most of that series, or the series with Nicola Murray,
I think her department being called DOSAC, was just the Department of Social Policy and Citizenship. DOSAC, you just know that it's doomed.
What was your department called, Harriet?
Quite similar, actually, Department of Social Security, but...
My thing... So sometimes, though, we would... sometimes we would come up with stories that were like, we had invented them, you know, and we thought, let's push it as stupidly as we can. And then a couple of weeks later, someone from Whitehall would say, how did you find out about
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We thought we'd kept that very quiet. What? That's true. And, you know, the opening episode has them in the back of a car trying to come up with a policy. Malcolm's rung up and said, the policy you've called the press in to here, you cannot go ahead, it's too expensive. So they've got to come up with a policy that sounds great but will cost nothing. And I've had various former cabinet members say to me quietly, I've been in the back of that car. But the thing is...
It's terrible.
And then somebody came up and said, I think the only thing the thick of it got wrong was there isn't a scene in it where everyone goes, oh, this is just like the thick of it, isn't it? But I have to say that's sort of when I wanted to stop, because I thought, don't you see, it's not painting a good, great picture of how politics works. And there is something about politicians who kind of like the flattery of a fictionalized version happening. I remember when we were doing Veep in America, and we were given access to then Vice President Biden's staff and officers and so on, and being shown around the West Wing by Obama's right-hand body man, Obama's Gary, if you know Veep, he was called Reggie Love, but he kept referencing the television show, The West Wing. So we'd be outside the Oval Office, and he'd go through here, and he'd go, this is the Roosevelt room. This would be where, say, CJ and Josh. But we're here. Why don't you say this is where Barack Obama would speak to Angela Merkel, not CJ, but they were kind of more interested in the TV kind of account of their existence, as if somehow their actual job was less interesting. And that's when there's something weird about that.
You did change politics. It wasn't just that you kind of reported on it, because
really
there was
sorry.
like the amount like the amount of stuff that has made it into lexicon. So, quiet bat people still gets referenced. Like, Omni Shambles, there was, every single front page of the Omni Shambles budget.
My favourite real one is Tom Tugendhat, when he was running for one of the numerous Conservative leadership campaigns. And he had a kind of poster behind him that said, Tugendhat, tough. I won't get these words exactly right, but it's something like tough, uncompromising, respected, decisive. And it just went turned down in his face. You know. And I just thought, surely. How many times has this been pointed out? And this is page 1, you know. And I kind of thought, you know, the thick of it was all about trying to say, God, they spend all the time about the image control and the, messaging, whatever. But what are they really thinking? But now I'm saying, get the messaging right, otherwise you look like a
press
dick.
officers.
You know,
there are junior press officers that I've come across that try to be Malcolm Tucker, and you have to take them aside and have a quiet word with the 21-year-old laddie and go, son, that's not how it works. That's not going to work.
That reminds me of when we were doing In the Loop, which was about the Iraq War, and we were allowed to film in number 10, I think because it was during the summer. It was Gordon Brown, but I think it was a Labour conference, so it was sort of empty, and they agreed to have us in. But it meant that Peter turned up as Malcolm Tucker, and everyone in number 10 wanted to be, have a photo of Malcolm punching them and whatever. but someone came up to me and went, "Hi, my name's Alpha. I'm the Jamie of this operation." Oh my God, you mustn't confess to something like that. That's like saying I'm a wanted criminal. You know, it's
Bell end, I would have said, if he introduced himself like that.
Yes.
But the story with Peter Capaldi being cast, because in real life he's an incredibly quiet,
he's a very genial,
quiet man.
Amiable. Yes, absolutely.
But your parents and his parents live really close to each other in Glasgow and are part of that tiny Italian community.
Yes, it turns out my dad built his parents' kitchen.
Right.
My dad was a kind of shop fitter and did kitchens and various things. And apparently Peter, who I didn't know at the time, but my parents knew his parents. My mum told this story of how my dad went out with Peter's uncles and came back in the middle of the night drunk and wet, having possibly capsized a police boat. So I think they were a bad crowd, I think. But we didn't know each other. But I said to my mum, oh, Peter Capaldi's in it. And she went, oh, oui, Peter. But no, and he is very genial. But I said to him, it turns out I hadn't realised this at the audition, that he was like really pissed off because he'd had a terrible other audition he'd been turned. He was in a foul mood, and so it was just right. And now this idiot was telling him to improvise. What, is he too lazy to write a script? I said, no, it's just, I want you to be very nice to me, try and persuade me to go, I'm the minister, and then if I resist, just turn on me. And when he turned on me, I thought, there we are, that's Malcolm Tucker. But as I said, it wasn't written as Scottish, but it became Scottish, I suppose, which I quite liked.
And
yes?
Would you now... What do you think your next thing could be? Would you, like Trump, would you want to do something on him? Is it not...
Trump is such a, it's like I said, he's such an ever-changing... I mean, that's his secret, I think, isn't it? Any sentence he says 2 or 3 things that are opposite to the other things in this, He will... how's it going with Putin? Putin is great. It's great. We had a great conversation. It's amazing. We're going to make a lot of progress. He's very sticky, though. Very sticky. I'm not sure we're going to get very far with him. Not sure. I don't like the guy. I like the guy. I don't, it just, and he somehow convinces enough people at the time that means something. That is his kind of secret weapon, I think. The fact that he can simultaneously say 4 different things, like a chord. He's able. So people come away from something he said, thinking, I think he said yes, and others are going, I think he said no. I think we don't know, and it could all change the next day. That's the frightening thing. Yeah.
So he would be hard. It would be hard to try and
capture. I think
it,
I'm interested in the people around. I'm interested. What interests me is the people who. In the Republican Party, who said, this guy is an insane Nazi lunatic, he will kill us all, and then a year later say, I'm so proud to serve under him. He's a true leader. Those, I want to know what's happened in their soul, really, or what has Trump got on them, you do talk to, tell me if you've had the experience, you're talking to American friends, journalists, people still involved out in DC, they talk about this, the fear, the climate of fear there. Are you on the list? If you're on the list, your life will be made hell, Not in a kind of they're going to come round and, kidnap a member of your family, but, the Inland Revenue will start investigating
Bad things will happen.
Bad things will happen that will just eat up a lot of your time, you're going to have to lawyer up, you will spend all your money on trying to defend yourself about what might happen, even though it might not happen. There's a lot of that, and that's very sinister. That is, the gangster, the protection racket. And the fact that he's so easily bought by, do you want a jumbo jet? Great. That's what do you want the king to invite you over? Yeah, fine. It's about that, and it's so blatantly transactional. No.
Armando, there's been some brilliant political comedies that have been written in this country. So you've got Yes Minister that you said sort of
which is still
this, and kind of House of Cards, which has gone across the Atlantic and stuff. And Michael Dobbs, who wrote House of Cards, sits next to me and Harriet in the House of Lords. You're clearly very political. Would you ever want to get your hands dirty and get involved rather than...
See, I'd be terrible because I'm... the thing politicians have to do, tell me if I'm wrong, is you kind of have to go along with what's been agreed, even if you disagree with it. If you want to properly play cabinet,
definitely, it's a team thing. You
collective responsibility. I'd find that very hard. So I'd always be the one in the end who sort of ended up being relegated to backbenchers because I said, well, I think this is nonsense. It's a different. How do I say this polite? I think it's just a different part of the brain that you have to use that I would find difficult to exercise, really.
It's a very polite way of saying that we're moral vacuums.
Yeah. All the clues were there. So
All the clues. You just threaded them together. Well, look, thank you for coming on and talking to us. We're going to take some audience questions now.
Yes.
Yes, you ready for that?
Okay.
Shall we crack on with some questions? Okay.
Who's got the first one?
Who's got the first one?
I think it's you, Beth.
Is it?
Yeah, because you're in charge.
Okay.
Nominally.
Oh, God. Oh. This is from Hannah. Where are you, Hannah? Everyone's like, I'm Hannah. Hi. Hannah, wave back at me. I'm feeling rejected.
Hannah!
Are you going to win? Are you going to win?
You're going to win it. You're going to win it.
So that guy used to be called Gobby. The original, when we were doing the thick of it, there was always, the BBC had this guy who was just paid to shout, you're going to be sacked, Minister.
Yeah.
You're going to be sacked. He was called Gobby.
He's created a whole genre.
Yeah.
And I believe I am an expert in there, actually. I'm going to take it. This is from Hannah. I don't know who. How long has Keir Starmer got before it all goes Pete Tong? And I also say Pete Tong for wrong. Is that not you? There's another Hannah.
There's another Hannah.
You're like, I didn't ask that. That's an outrageous question. Another Hannah. Where is the other? It's. Huh?
All the Hannah.
It's you. You put someone else's name, so you're called Jane. It's Jane. Just get the bag, it's yours. Right, okay, so how long has Keir Starmer got before it all goes Pete Tong wrong? Who wants to answer that?
I think he's pretty secure. And I think that what will be really interesting is because the Labour Party are so much more tolerant of leaving leaders in place than the Tories are, that even though his sort of ratings are so much lower than the party's, I think he's got until after the next election. I don't see anyone pulling the trigger this side of kind of 2029.
I think, because you touched on it in the first half, I do find the Kemi Badenoch thing very funny, in that I just, again, I may be wrong, but I get the feeling they're all going, I mean, she's got to go.
Yeah.
But
I mean, those discussions are happening, yes.
But we would look insane if we did that again. But we have done it before. We are insane. So let's do it again. Because the definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing, thinking one time it will be right.
But I mean, it's the very definition of, do I choose rock? Do I choose hard place?
Yes. Yes.
So Kemi's going before Keir Starmer, yeah?
Well, that's the funny thing, because will they? I don't know. I think it's...
I mean...
Yes. So, generic, tell me what generic... Because I came across this phrase the other day, that generic was sub-campaigning. Which means...
He's a sub-campaigner.
Even when he's supportive of the leader, it's actually, he's deliberately doing that to look good as part of his campaign. So now he can't do anything without being accused of campaigning to take over from her.
He's very active.
He's very active.
Very active.
Under,
in a sub-campaigny way.
Yeah.
In a sub-campaign
Anyway, we've wandered from Claire. Harriet, what do you think?
Yeah.
Well, so I think there's no... I mean, obviously, Labour MPs will be looking at the opinion polls, and they'll be looking at the absolute thumping we got in the council and mayoral elections, and they'll be worried about what's going to happen in Scotland and Wales. But I think that after the sort of turmoil and political change there was, with chancellors changing all the time and prime ministers changing all the time, there was a promise that we would do stability and that we would have a manifesto and try and get on with that. And I think that there is not an appetite for chaos in the Labour Party, and leadership undermining is deadly. So I think there's quite a lot of loyalty to Keir Starmer, albeit there's a lot of anxiety in the party. There's also, a willing him to succeed rather than wanting to undermine him.
Another thing about how the system works is that revolving door thing with cabinet ministers, and part of the problem of what happened over the last 14 years was not so much the 4 or 5 prime ministers, but, you know, the 11 housing ministers,
Absolutely.
the 13 culture secretaries, the 10 or whatever education. So there was no time for anything to be done in any kind of long term or even medium term way. That's where I think a lot of that, and I think a lot of people understood that. You know, they could see that was what was.
I think also for Starmer, one of the things is that because it's been a bumpy start and the poll ratings have been really bad and his personal poll rating has sort of plummeted, people have kind of forgotten, or he won a massive majority. I mean, he won 180 seats, was it?
But why doesn't he utilise those other people like Angela Rayner? And
yeah, but
you know?
I mean, the point being that it's the idea that because you have a rocky start and it's not going very well in the polls, that you know the power that you get or the patronage you get from delivering that majority somehow gets cancelled out within 2 or 3 years of leadership.
Also, if you come for the king, you've got to take the king. There's nobody that's powerful enough with a base enough to take him out, and there's not a natural successor. And he's also pretty ruthless. Like in the way he's already got rid of people, like his personal power and dominance is growing every time he sacks somebody or is shown to not put sentiment above, you know, or personal history above what needs doing. So, I mean, I think he's pretty secure for some time to come.
Is it a reflection of the fact that now, you know, Prime Minister, it's become much more presidential?
Yeah.
You know, it's the Prime Minister and his or her group of advisors and close associates, and that's it. And therefore, there's a kind of wariness of anyone else who might get a profile.
Well, you were saying that, like, why don't they utilise?
Why don't they have, you know, why isn't Angela Rayner out there telling the story?
This leads on to the next question.
Okay, yes.
So this is from Murph, Murph. Murph, where are you? Hey, Murph over there. Pick up your tote bag at the end from Alice in the foyer. It'll have Haribo in it. Haribo. Murph's question is, when will we have our next female Prime Minister and which party will she come from? Please name names, panel. Not Labour.
Well, we're trying not to have a leadership election, so that's the answer. However, I do think that I can say one person I don't think it will be, and that is Kemi Badenoch. But that's, I think that I feel quite mean saying that because she seems a bit desperate at the moment. Did you notice all her thing about I was gobsmacked? This was after the EU reaffirmation of the fishing deal, which they'd actually instituted. But she's starting to try and, obviously somebody's advising her to get very colloquial language. So she doesn't sound like herself anymore when she's talking about being gobsmacked. It's, but anyway, so not her. But I do think it is embarrassing that, I mean, how many of the Tory women prime ministers have there been? What, 3 or something? And we haven't
two
had
and a
one.
half.
2.5, yeah. Oh, so a fun fact is that Liz Truss was Prime Minister and leader of her party for less time than I was interim leader of the Labour Party. So that's not long at all. Very short time. Very short time.
If she was a head of lettuce, would you say we were a head of broccoli? Is that how that works? Have you got one there?
Oh, right. OK. This is one which is for Ruth, definitely. From Hayley and Victoria. Hayley and Victoria has asked a painful question. They're here, but they've asked this painful question.
Up there.
Oh,
yes.
right.
There we are.
Ruth, do you think Boris Johnson will return to politics?
So when Beth talks about her Brexit PTSD, so I think I personally think that he is going to No, I personally think he will. I'm trying to find the right words here. Actually, one of his former spokespeople is in the audience when he was Mayor of London, so I'm going to try and get the exact right words. I think that he will dangle the carrot. So I think he wants to be courted. I think he wants people to clamour for him to come back. And I think that he will hint at it and show a bit of ankle and cosy up to it and then run away again and then cosy up to it some more. But ultimately, I don't think he wants the scrutiny of being an MP again. I think he enjoys the beaches and the speeches too much. I think he likes not having any responsibilities. I don't think he wants the kind of things that you have to declare when you're an MP. And fundamentally, I don't think he ever enjoyed the work. I don't think he enjoyed the job. I think he liked the status, but I don't think he liked the work, is my view of Boris Johnson.
I think he doesn't like somebody else doing it when he thinks that he's born to do it and born to do it better. I mean, I don't have any, psychological insight, but when I see tweets that he puts out, like the things he's put out after the European deal, he sounds to me like, so I'm thinking...
I think both of these things can be true.
Yeah, but I'm thinking the answer is, so do you think Boris Johnson will return to politics? I think the answer is yes.
Another sub-campaigner.
Now, wasn't he meant to be hosting a GB News programme that he got paid a lot for? And why is he... What's happened there?
He was meant to. He did do an interview with him the other day, but the news programme hasn't appeared.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Sorry.
This is a fun question. It's from Gems Taylor. I just love that name. Where are you?
Down there.
Oh, right down the front.
Gems
Hello.
Taylor. I'm going to nick that. That's great. Very nice. Okay, this is for you, Amanda.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, it's actually addressed to you. Which British politician most reminds you of Selina Meyer? She's the VP in Veep. If you haven't seen it, you must watch it. In terms of being a complete moral vacuum.
Okay. I'm going to go for a kind of like a Frankenstein's monster of... there's a little bit vacuumism, because there is an element of that with Starmer, I feel, in that, again, you touched on it, that there isn't that, what are you for? What do you want us to do? There's that slight, it almost has that look of, I don't know, Blair was very, and Johnson was... Starmer looks like he's been caught in the rain and the taxi he booked is at least half an hour late. He doesn't know whether he should stand it out and just hope it comes, or whether he should just turn around and walk. That's the look on his face. But it doesn't galvanise the country in any kind of unified way. So there's an element of that. And then Liz Truss, because that moment when, if you remember, in her fleeting premiership, when she came out and everything was overturned, she got rid of her chancellor, and she took a press conference, and the blinding look of staring journalists in a room and not quite knowing who to call, because she knew any question she was about to be asked, even if it was from a friendly face, would be, why are you the wrongest thing there's ever been? Just that kind of... And yet somehow she's reinvented herself as this, fighter for freedom. In fact, it was all the deep state that took her down, and she was right and you're all wrong. And some American MAGA-esque Trumpite freedom fighter. There's something there which has an element of Selina Meyer. Because Selina Meyer, her presidency didn't last that long, but she tried to kind of find a new purpose for herself. And couldn't, really. I see an element of that.
Okay. Really. Do you like that answer? Do you agree? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question, that. I wish I'd thought
get a
that
Haribo.
question. That was good. Yeah.
OK, I've got another question which I think I'm going to
Who's it from?
put from Michael Switzer. Hi, Michael. So this is going to be a question for Ruth, I think. What was your worst ever misspeak?
I mean, thank you for thinking I would have said things away. So much for your female solidarity there, sister. I think misspeak. Before I was a politician, I worked in news, and I was mostly a news and current affairs radio presenter. And I had a nemesis, it turned out, who I've never met, who was Heather Mills, or Heather Mills McCartney. And I think I've said on one of the pods, I was once reading a news bulletin for a small local radio station, and somebody ran in and like handed a card to put at the back of the pile of news stories, which is about her engagement to Paul McCartney. And it was like, former Beatle Paul McCartney has got engaged today to the charity campaigner Heather Mills. They announced it at his farm, wherever it was. And then Miss Mills flashed her ring at waiting photographers, which, like the 14-year-old boy I am, I laughed heartily at. And then, which is fine, on air, crashed. I made the DJ laugh. We couldn't go to to the music or anything like that. Had a meeting with the station manager without tea and biscuits later on that day. But then, fast forward to the end of their marriage, and by this time I'd made it all the way to the heady heights of the BBC, and I was interviewing a very kind of sort of respected legal editor of the Times, a chap called Joshua Rosenberg, about the court case that everybody was enjoying about their divorce. And there was a rumour, and I have to be very careful here because she is litigious, about what had caused the breakdown of their marriage. And in probably the worst misspeak / could get us sued, I asked Joshua Rosenberg, so Mr. Rosenberg, who is Heather Mills shagging? I mean suing. Who's she suing and why? And again, that was another meeting without tea and biscuits. So, like the pro he is, Joshua just completely ignored the fact I got us all into trouble. And it didn't come out in the court transcripts and we were all fine. All of us were fine. It was all fine.
I've got one which is a bit the thick of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I first started on television, I was very new and I didn't really understand how it worked. I was tasked with going to Downing Street and chasing people up and down the street, something I still enjoy. And I was with Shona, my producer, who I think is somewhere here, and we were chasing cabinet ministers out of cabinet, something to do with Brexit, and I was chasing them. And in my head, if the camera wasn't on me, I wasn't on mic. Right? So if the camera wasn't facing my face, right, somehow no one on live television would hear me if I wasn't looking at it. Don't ask me the logic. And we were running across Whitehall, and I was chasing, I think, the Defence Secretary, and I dropped my phone. And I went, shit, I dropped my phone! Which was broadcast live on television.
Thanks.
And Adam Bolton at the time was the presenter, and he went, apologies there for a member of the public who's... So I can tell you now, I have never mispronounced Jeremy Hunt on air. Never. I'm not
Especially
that woman.
when he was the culture secretary.
Yeah, I never did it, and I'm proud of myself for that.
And there was one, I think it was Andrew Marr, who was talking about how funny it is that people kept tripping up over Jeremy Hunt, the culture secretary, and then he did it as well.
Yeah, well, pride becomes before a fall on that, yeah? I shouldn't have said that, I've jinxed it. Fortunately, he's not in cabinet
My
anymore,
favourite one
so
of cabinet ministers coming out of number 10 during a reshuffle and somebody asking the gobby successor. Apparently John Reid, who was a Labour, just came out and went, fuck, it's health. And he was like, poor man.
Do you know what was the best thing about that? Was when he came out of He's Been Named, was that you could clearly see the 20 deck of fags in his top pocket as he was there. It was so, it was just a picture, an absolute picture.
Good.
I've got one last question here, which is for you, Beth.
Oh, yeah.
It's from Fee Webster. Where's Fee? Yeah. There you go, Fee. I think she's a fan. She says, how on earth do you fit everything into your life? You are amazing. And we say yes to that.
So nice. Fee, I'm going to come find you, give you a hug for that. Can I take that with me?
Yeah.
Take that home? I don't know. I'll get Angelo to answer that. You get maybe a different answer. I don't know. That's really nice.
Training for a marathon and being the political editor at a time when there was quite a lot of politics happening. And having two kids.
That's lovely. Thanks. I'm going to keep that, Fee. Thank you.
Is it Coke?
Huh?
Is it Coke and pickles?
It's what?
Nothing. It's
I've lost myself in Fee's. I'm just rereading it.
How do you keep going, love?
What do you mean?
Do you put hearing aid batteries in?
I just sleep a lot.
There'll be a bus in a minute. The bus is coming.
The bus is coming. Is the bus going to come and take me home? It's going to come and take me home. We're out of time. That's it. Let's end there. I'm getting the bus with my hearing aids. Thank you, Fee.
It feels like a care home, this.
It was nice. Do you feel cared for?
I do.
Do you feel cared for? Like you could come and spend time with us, and we could just shoot the breeze, couldn't we?
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be nice. He's like, no.
I'll come and bring your milk at night. And biscuit.
Tuck me in.
Yeah.
Read me a bedtime story.
How did we get into this?
I don't know where we're going. We've got to end this show. We actually do, because we're out of time. So, Armando, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all for coming tonight. It's been lovely to hang out with you. Do spread the love of ED with all your friends. We'd like that if you enjoy the pod.
And before we go, we have one thing to ask of
we
you.
need to
Every
do
live
this.
show, we like to take a picture with you guys in it to prove that people came. Thank you for coming. So if you could put on your best smile. Would you mind joining us? Is that okay?
Right, so what we do is... They're always bad, but... It was bad. Right, that's it. No, you're in. Right.
Here we go.
Right, ready?
One,
2, 3. Yay!
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.